common man, etc. And while he was recognized as one of the great intellects, and everybody thought he would go in that direction, he actually specifically chose not to. And he stayed with his great love of the people, etc. But his book is brilliant. So, you know, I just want to read 1 or 2 lines from here and 1 or 2 lines from another one. But everybody points out that this parsha, this reading of the Torah, has a strange intro. Right? That's a very unique introduction. It says, "Vayidaber Moshe el Roshei Matot l'bnei Yisrael lemor." Instead of, usually he says, God says to Moshe, tell the people. Here, Moshe speaks kind of, it seems like on his own, to the tribal leaders, to Roshei Matot. And that's a unique word that's not used elsewhere. Usually the tribes are called Shevet. That's the usual word for tribe. Here they use the word Mateh, or Matot, which is a word that doesn't appear elsewhere. So it's strange. And then it says, Zeh hadavar, that's what I was referring to before. This is the thing. So each one of these words leads to a huge amount of commentaries on the part of everyone. But he points out a very interesting thing here. He says, this thing here, this line of Zeh hadavar refers to another line where the word Mateh also appears. And that is when God asks Moshe, what do you have, Masei biyadcha, what do you have in your hand? And he says, Mateh, that he has a staff. And this is earlier, when Moses is taking on the commission to go free the Jews from Egypt, right? So that's when he turns it into a stick, right? So he has this Mateh, this stick, and he turns it into a stick. So God says, what do you have there in your hand? So, I mean, obviously he knows what is that really, what's the point? So usually when there's a question in the Torah like that, it's not a question of knowledge, it's trying to illustrate something. So essentially what he says here is that, hold on, let me find the line. So he says, L'kach amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Masei biyadcha. God says to him, what's that in your hand? Perish. Eze koach ata rotzeh sheyeh biyadcha lahanhig hador. What do you want to have in your hand? In other words, what power, what ability do you wish to have as the leader of the people? What do you find to be the most important ability that you have? And Moshe answers, Mateh. What does that mean? What does the word Mateh mean? Again, the word doesn't mean what it means. It means what it is read as. Perush, sheyeh b'cholto lahatot levavam l'tova. He wanted the ability, lahatot. Lahatot means to transform or to change their hearts to good. So the reference to Mateh means a transformational change, the ability to change people's hearts, to win them over, to make them over, to change their way of thought, to take them in some other way. And that's what it's saying here also. That the Roshei Matot, the leadership of Bnei Israel, what leadership means is the ability to transform the hearts of the people. That's what true leadership is. Not people who yell at them, not tell them that they stink, not to burden them, but rather the ability to transform them, to take them along to the right way. So I think that was something that I liked in the context of what we're talking about. So again, the word, the power of the word is the power to uplift, to transform.
Yeah. And if you're joining us late, we're studying the last few chapters of the book of Numbers. In Jewish talk, we're studying the Torah portions of Matot and Masei, and we've mainly been talking about the significance of vows. There's a lot of space, a lot of text devoted to laws of making a vow and how one can get out of a vow, and when is a husband responsible for his wife, and father responsible for his daughter making a vow.
Well, that's the technical part. We're
getting into
the meta,
the meaning of this text for our lives today. And what text do you have there?
Just find my place for a second. I'm getting stage fright.
So I'm here with Dr. Kirschbaum, who writes the weekly Torah commentary for Tikkun magazine, and you can find online. Just Google Tikkun commentary, Torah portion, and
Oh, so I thought this was interesting.
so
So
what's
again,
the,
you're
what's
talking
this
about the
book?
power of the word. So this is another in the important line of Polish Hasidus. This is the writings of Simcha Banim of Pshischa.
Mm-hmm.
So going early into the history of Hasidic commentary and reading. But you asked about why is the word so important in the Tao, and I gave you a set of examples of how the world is created in with the word, the Aseret HaDibrot, Aseret Mamarot, etc. But here's an interesting thing. So there's a famous line in this is a very radical line again. In so much of this stuff in contemporary, the way that contemporary orthodoxy is trending in your art scroll world, some of this would never have appeared, but it wasn't the way that they wrote in those times. And so there's a line in Chazal that Tzaddik Gozer v'Kadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim, that there's actually a dialogue. The world is in a dialogue. I mean, if you read through the Torah, you see this all along. Very frequently, God wants to do something, and the tzaddikim say, maybe we got a better idea, or the world won't be able to stand with that. From the beginning, right? It says that the very initial creation of the world was supposed to be in a strict form of justice, that the world would not have been able to exist in.
Mm-hmm.
So, why did God choose the wrong choice to start with? The point of the Midrash is to say that there is this dialogue.
Right.
So there is it's not a statement about God. It's a statement about relationships. So there is this idea that through our prayer, for example, this is, contra, say, Christian Science and other such things. We believe, we don't believe that disease is punishment. And we believe that situations can be changed by our actions,
Mm-hmm.
and by our prayers, and even by our words. I mean, what does that mean? Tzaddik goes there because Baruch Hu Mekayim. It means that we try to say something and we change existence, so to speak, in that way. We change history by our words. So he says a very interesting thing here. It says that the Torah Seder Olam, Chadin Torah mitnagim kol olamot, and the Torah, the words of the Torah are essentially the blueprint of all existence,
Mm-hmm.
which is why they read it so broadly, right? It's not just the narrative there, but it's a whole set of other things. But he says that the following. But the interesting thing is, Nimsa shekevet sheyachol ha'adam la'asar la'atzmo dvarim hamutarim bedin Torah. A person can forbid on himself things that the Torah generally allows. Means, and he's making it by doing so, right? By taking this vow, it has the weight of Torah in forbidding him to do this, right? Him or her.
Mm-hmm.
So, nimtza hapeh b'koach la'asot din Torah means that essentially our speech can make Torah.
Ah, wow.
Now,
Because we do think that, because modern rabbis today, when they get up and speak, they're a particularly esteemed rabbi. There's something called Das Torah, we believe, because they're so grounded
Das
in
Torah
Torah.
is a later concept.
But anyway, people are still creating Torah today. Like when a great rabbi gets up and speaks, we're saying that's Torah.
The whole point of Torah Shabbat, this was last week's parsha. The daughters of Tzlafchad come forward and they say something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's not right.
Mm-hmm.
The way that we're interpreting the Torah laws are not just. And God says, you're right. And the Sfas Emes points out that is the first example of Torah Shebaal Peh. So the purpose of Torah Shebaal Peh is not to make people's lives miserable. This is the later concept that coming up in the Protestant countries where, the assumption is religion's job is to make people nasty and upset and unhappy. But rather, we believe that the transformation of the world is living through Torah.